Hi everyone, today we are here in our Hong Kong office on Duttle Street with Josh and a very special guest, Taiwanese-born fashion editor Eugene Tong. Eugene was a style director, of the men's magazine Details and has previously worked at FHM and Cargo. Now an independent fashion consultant collaborating with the likes of John Elliot, Public School, and Kith. Eugene's in Hong Kong today. What are you doing here in Hong Kong?
I was here actually launching a capsule collection with a local brand called At 20.
Tell us about it.
It was a 30-piece capsule collection that I made with At 20. It's kind of like my take on my wardrobe and kind of living in the city and the items that you need in the city and things like that. And so, yeah, it's exciting to be here.
That's great. Thanks for joining us. We're happy you're here. And normally you live in New York City.
Yes, I am. That is home base.
Awesome.
But I try to travel as much as I can.
Yes. And Josh, we have some questions for you. And we know that you're an avid watch collector and also watches go hand in hand with fashion.
Yes.
So we wanted to get your take on it, which is a little bit different than the normal perspective of the watch collectors that we have. You kind of go more aesthetic, so we wanted to talk to you about it.
Yeah, I'm definitely an amateur, so go easy.
I think watches and fashion go hand in hand really closely. I'd love to hear about the watch you're wearing. You can see it's a special edition.
Yeah.
In addition to some of the other watches that you have in your collection currently.
Yeah. Well, this one specifically that I'm wearing is actually my latest acquisition. I got this about a year ago. It's an IWC chronograph Retropont, but it was actually the special edition for their Paris boutique. And I just I've always loved the Portuguese, and I thought it was a beautiful watch. It's like a super, I think, elegant watch, but it also still has a bit of a sporty feel. And so when I saw this version, I love the black subdials with the gray face. I just think it's really beautiful. And, anytime I think I can get something that's a little bit more special, it's always nice. And so, so this is definitely my latest one, which I love. I have a Rolex GMT Master 2. I have a Omega Speedmaster. I have a Tudor Black Bay. That's why I kind of feel like my collection is kind of like the starter kit for like the men's collection.
All the classics.
All the classics kind of build off of the foundations of like the must-haves and what I think. But yeah, that's kind of a few others here and there, but those are kind of like the main ones for sure.
It's very cool. I saw the IWC when you came in, because we never saw that dial before.
Yeah.
So it really popped right away. It's really gorgeous.
Thank you.
Good piece.
Yeah. Really
I'd love to get your opinion. We always talk about what watches do you wear in a formal setting, casually at the beach, at work.
Yeah.
So do you think there are strict rules for these different settings, or
honestly, I feel like nowadays, especially with fashion and just kind of the way that the world is going, there are no strict rules, but I think there is just an appropriate time and place for certain things and things like that. So I'm a firm believer in kind of like a watch being an accessory and not being the focal point. So I think it should kind of blend in with your outfit, kind of accentuate certain things, but it shouldn't be the focus. I think I'm always less is more for me, and less ostentatious, less kind of showy. So for me, a great kind of formal watch would just be a simple dial and clean, nothing too oversized. I also have kind of a bit of a dainty Asian wrist, so oversized doesn't work for me, but on certain guys. So I think it's like fashion, you got to know kind of like where you're going, what the setting's going to be, what you're wearing, and what you're comfortable in, and kind of choose the watch accordingly. So, for me, a nice formal watch would be a Lange Datograph, which is obviously a really nice watch. But for me, it's just, I love the elegance of it. I love the size of it. It's just super beautiful, and I think will look great with any type of tuxedo or suit or things like that. Obviously, for me, the casual watches and kind of more weekend kind of fall in line with more kind of like the Rolex or the Speedmasters. Personally, I love the Batman. Obviously, this is kind of one that I really am considering acquiring. And then for kind of a good casual watch, I think the Phantom 50 from Blancpain is a really great. I love this kind of Kevlar strap and things like that. I think that brings the kind of dressiness down a little bit, but then it's still just really elegant and beautiful. So that's kind of what I would do. But again, like I said, with fashion as well, like there's no real rules. So it's just whatever you're comfortable in, whatever you think is appropriate. I have my opinions, but who's to say they're correct or things like that, so.
And I like how you say you prefer a watch that's, more under the radar, less ostentatious.
Yeah.
you're back in our vault where we have so many different things, and you're picking watches you want to talk about.
Yeah.
You've picked some really exceptional pieces, but very subtle watches. So everything from an Omega Speedmaster, which is, as understated as it gets,
Yeah.
the elongate datograph, which is super complicated, super special, but to somebody who does not know, it's very...
Yeah, I think that's the thing, right? I think as men, like you want, it's like a car, right? You don't need the flashy yellow Ferrari. People who appreciate cars, like people who appreciate watches, they know what you have on your wrist.
They'll know what it is.
Yeah, they'll know what it is, and for me, that's a little bit better than look at me,
Right.
And I think there's a lot of talking points, especially with datograph of the highly complications and things like that. So for me, it's less about, showing off and more about like what is personal to you and what you love and things like that. So yeah, I mean, I definitely am more subtle than flashy.
Right, I think that shows here in your choices.
Do you want to talk about any of the watches that you have in your collection that have like a story behind them?
Yeah, I mean, the one that always comes to mind for me is my GMT Master 2. I have an older brother, and when he turned 30, my parents got him a Submariner. And we thought as a family, or me and my brother thought, well, it was a good tradition to have, and so I'm 5 years younger than him, and so I was like, I'm all for this, and so... But at the time, I was working at the magazines, and I was going to trade shows, and I was kind of deep in the world of watches, and I started talking to them about my watch and what I wanted for my 30th at around 27, 28, and I actually convinced my parents that since watch prices were going up year to year, especially on Rolex, it's a good investment, and that I should get mine early. So I actually got my 30th birthday watch on my 28th birthday.
Well done.
And like if you know my family, my brother and my sister will probably say that's just the way I always am. I always get what I want earlier than when I'm supposed to get it. But for me, my parents saw that it was like, that was correct, that each year it would be more expensive. So if they waited another 2 years, they would have to pay more. And being good Chinese parents that they are, they agreed with me, and I got my watch early.
That was a good call.
Yeah, I kind of swindled them out of that one.
Something that I like that you said, I think for certain kind of watch nerd type collectors, the watch comes first and then comes the outfit. But for you, you pick out the outfit and then it goes then you pick out the watch accordingly.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of goes hand in hand, right? I think you kind of have an idea of what it is that you're going to wear, and then if you have a watch collection, you kind of pair it, the same way that you would pair a bag if you're a woman, or a pair of shoes if you're a guy. Things like that is, I think it should just all complement each other. It shouldn't be one thing should be leading the other. I think, there's a time and a place, like I said, and appropriate, and to everyone, they have their own kind of feelings about that, and so it's really personal, I think.
Do you think that the fashion world is taking watches more seriously? Obviously, there are fashion brands like Chanel, Gucci, they all make watches, but do you see that brands are starting, or fashion-forward brands are starting to take maybe higher complication watches more seriously, or really go to fine-tune their watchmaking to kind of add to their watch collection?
I think specifically you mentioned Chanel, Cartier also comes to mind. I think these brands that were traditionally may not be traditional watch brands are taking watches seriously because I think the consumer is more knowledgeable now, and they want. And I think before, even if you look at on the women's market, before I think brands and watchmakers thought women just wanted small watches that look pretty and diamonds, but I think they're finding, and I'm sure you guys know, that women are just as savvy as your male consumer. They care about complications. They care about the heritage of a brand. They care about what's on their wrists more than just like, oh, it's pretty, So I think watch brands and also just fashion brands in general are noticing that, and they want to tout that they do have the expertise. They have the wherewithal to make, and they have the master craftsmen that can do higher complications, or make it more than just a novelty watch that has a fashion brand logo on it, So yeah, I think it's really important now.
I'd be curious to know your take actually on companies like Bamford, who take a good watch, like a Daytona or a Submariner or even a Nautilus, and customize it completely for the client's requests. Whether it's blacking out or changing colors. How do you feel about that?
I think it's great. I know that there's issues between the brands of changing things around, and I can see from both sides. But I think a company like Bamford, I think, is really cool. I think it offers something, a level of customization that I think is kind of in demand now. Everybody wants something that's one of one, and I think you see that across fashion, not only in fashion, but also cars and things like that. People want things that are special, and they want things that they can change and make their own. And so for me, companies like that, I think it's a great option. I think that's a great option as as a second or third watch, I'm still a firm believer that, your first watch or your first couple watches should be proper kind of watch brands and things like that. Yeah, all original. And then, and then I think you kind of build on that. But yeah, I'm a big fan of Bamford. That's definitely on my list of things that I would love to get as well. It's just cool, and I think it just looks nice, and I think it can round out your collection out really well.
Interesting opinion. It's like one watch, rest of your life. What's your dream watch? You can only have one.
Such a hard question.
I mean, if it had to be one, then probably be the Panda Paul Newman Daytona.
Okay.
That's kind of like my holy grail. If I had an extra $500,000 just lying in the bank, that's what I would spend it on. But yeah, I think that is the epitome to me of just like the perfect storm of a great design, beautiful, watch. That it's just that watch literally to me can work in any setting.
Durability as well.
Durability. I mean, just it's just like it's also obviously iconic, and yeah, people who know real recognizes real. Like I can stand next to any diamond blinged out watch or any AP or any of these kind of big watches, which nothing against them, but it stands up and it's a steel watch from the 60s. So that kind of timeless classic design is what I look for when I'm shopping for fashion and things like that. And to me, that is something that is really representative of that. So if I had one watch to wear, yeah, that would be it.
Love that.
Would you ever wear diamond watches with a lot of diamonds?
Probably not.
Yeah, not your style.
Not my style. I mean, I'm a big believer that, a watch is, and maybe a wedding ring, obviously, those are kind of like the only jewelry that a man should wear. I think, I'm not a big kind of blingy guy and things like that, and so I actually think it's looks better when you're just kind of understated. Simple, yeah.
And
classic.
Probably not safe to ride in New York City subway with.
No, and
and
that's
what I care about.
Yeah, and I'm not a musician or an athlete, and so I don't feel like I need that,
Yeah. So you've been to SIHH and Basel, and I'm sure you've heard a lot of the news that a lot of brands are starting to leave these shows.
Yeah.
I wanted your opinion on if you think that these shows are becoming antiquated, because now with social media, you don't need so much of an event to make these watch releases when people are posting them on social media anyway, and that's how most people see them.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's kind of, you're seeing this kind of trend kind of throughout fashion. I think trying to figure out in this new digital age how to market or sell. And I think just like on the fashion side, where fashion shows are no longer the only avenue you can take to show your product or things like that, I think that's the same thing that's happening on the watch side. So I think Basel and SIHH, I think it's still necessary in my opinion, just like I still think fashion shows are necessary. But I do think the brands have a little bit more flexibility now in terms of how they want to show product, how they want to, stand out to consumers or buyers. And so it may not necessarily be just putting all your eggs in one basket and just showing at a trade show, and maybe breaking it up and maybe having moments throughout the year. Or, I think now fashion is adapting to this more drop model kind of fashion calendar. And I think watches perhaps could probably do the same. I know that obviously the manufacturing needs to align with that, but I think in general, I think there's just more ways to kind of tell your story. And I think being at a trade show, while it's great and you can hit a lot of people at one time, it's not the only way to tell your story.
And do you think that now I know you have a lot of followers on Instagram, and there's obviously so much about how important influencers are. Do you think that sometimes influencers on social media are give a little more impact than certain brand ambassadors that people are hiring to pay?
Yeah, I think influencers in general versus celebrity endorsers or things like that is just kind of more accessibility, more relatability, I think a social media influencer or whoever it may be is more relatable than George Clooney or Leo, and I think someone can aspire to be like George Clooney or Leo, but there's only going to be one George Clooney and one Leo. And so I think that's where I think influencers kind of come. It's like kind of more the everyman, so like you can kind of relate to them more, and I think it's important, and it's obviously proven that certain influencers can move product. But I think it also comes down to kind of, especially with watches, is it's less about kind of influencer and how many followers they have, but perhaps more about the knowledge they have. Because I think this is definitely one, thing that you have to you have to be knowledgeable if you really want to be deep in this game, and so I think it's less about selfies and things like that, and more about like knowing reference numbers or knowing heritage or knowing why a certain watch costs, why it costs, and things like that. And I think, yeah, and I think that stuff is much more important than just look at me, selfie, and things like that, or you know, taking pretty pictures with watches on and things like that. So for me, I think it's more about following the right people, not necessarily following the most popular people, you know.
Interesting.
In terms of targeting millennials and the next generation, specifically with watches, do you find that the watch brands have been slower than, for instance, the fashion brands in embracing technology, selling online, offering these services?
I think luxury in general has been slow to the game of online and e-com and reaching consumers that way. And I think it before, and I think it's getting less and less, but I think it kind of was a tricky situation for them, because I think part of luxury and part of the aura of buying something like this or high fashion is the service that you get and the experience, you know, the boutique, going to the boutique and, you know, bringing the champagne and making you feel like all cool and important, you know. And I think that was kind of like, how do we translate that online? And I think with millennials and coming up and the way that they shop and kind of now that online retail is kind of almost overtaken traditional brick and mortar retail, I think everyone needs to adapt. And I think they're starting to figure out how to kind of give that luxury feeling and service through an online thing. For me, I'm old school. I still prefer to walk into a shop and have that interaction and try things on and things like that. But I think it's, again, going back to your previous question, I think you have to kind of have multi-tiered kind of retail strategy. You can't just have brick and mortar. You can't just have online.
To reach everybody.
To reach everybody, it's nice to have both. And I think you're starting to see that with the big major fashion retailers. They're starting to realize, like, having a brick and mortar, even if it's just what they call a showroom, or for people to kind of come in to see what a brick and mortar physical space would look like in like online retail, I think is also helpful. So I think you kind of have to have both. It's kind of like, to me these days, it's like, you know, it's the Wild West. You kind of have to throw as many things at the wall as you can.
See what sticks.
Yeah, and see what sticks and see what works. And so I think for me, the luxury brands, and especially the watch brands, are now becoming a little bit more comfortable with the idea of selling online. You know, you're seeing more and more brands go on to Mr. Porter and things like that, or have their own websites and things like that, or even, you know, WatchBox and brands like that. Like, I think it's slowly changing, but I think, you know, there is still a big stigma behind buying something so expensive online with sight unseen. You know, there's like a mystery.
It's a trust factor.
There's a trust factor.
Yeah, what do you think will change that?
I think just time. I think as more people get comfortable, just like I think, you know, our parents' generation probably is less comfortable with social media, and our generation is a little bit more comfortable. And then now the newest generation, it's just like, it's part of their life.
Yeah.
You know, they come out the womb with the phone, you know. So for me, it's, you know, for me, it's just going to take time. And just like everything else, it'll become a norm and it'll become acceptable. And, you know, I think then people will just have the option of like, yeah, I'm fine with dropping $30,000 online with Apple Pay and in 2 days getting a watch, you know.
I think that's the future. To some degree, it's going to be inevitable.
Yeah.
I don't think the boutiques will ever go away completely.
No.
People want that experience.
Exactly.
And, to feel that
And
the emotion of buying something in person.
Yeah, and you also still, I mean, you know, specifically like for like a data graph, like you want someone that is knowledgeable to walk you through those complications, to show you how to do that, to show you how to wind some of these watches and make sure that you're not damaging it, or, you know, just like for you to get familiar. You know, it's like buying a car. Like, you want to do all the research online, and you want to make sure you're going into the dealership knowing what you want, knowing what they have and things like that. But it's still nice to get the first-hand experience of like, this is how this works, and this is why this is this way, or things like that, or, you know, these are things like this. So for me, it's inevitable that it will become the norm. But I think retail going away, I don't think so.
Right.
Just like people say that magazine's going to go away, I don't think that's going to happen.
They're still here.
Yeah, and they're still here.
I just want to thank Eugene for visiting our Hong Kong office on Tuttle Street. Really cool to have you here and share this moment with you. You know, you're quite a cool insight to the watch game that we really haven't
Yeah, thanks for having me. So can I just pick one of these now, or how you guys want to do?
Whichever one you
want. You can just wrap this tray up, and I'll see you guys. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Eugene.
Thank you so much.
Eugene.
Thank you.
Thank you.